I do want to touch on this about the insurance companies and insurance cancellation. The insurance companies, I won't even give you my opinion. The insurance companies have been attacked
Mhm.
by any number of individuals and groups and entities and things like this. They've been attacked for being heartless, and I mean it's just a fact.
Mm.
And I'll tell you from a personal point of view. Again, I lived there. I was in a high fire risk zone.
Mhm.
By the way, you talk about irony. I was the last house on that street that was in that zone. Our friends to the west of us, that house that went down, they were outside of the high risk zone. They
Wow.
were considered a different risk than we were. Their house burned, our old house didn't. You just talk about fate. But here's the thing, we lived there for 7 years. We lived there for 7 years. And in the 7 years that we lived there, our our homeowners insurance, because it included fire insurance, of course, was canceled twice.
Mhm.
I had three different insurers in the 7 years that we lived there. My insurance premiums rose by 350% in the
Mhm.
7 years that we lived there. And look, like them or love them, insurance companies are in business to make a profit. If they receive $1 million, I'm just using,
Mhm.
easy, hard numbers that even I can understand. If they receive $1 million in premiums and every year they have to pay out $1.5 million in claims, they cannot survive.
Right.
That's reality. You can call them evil, call them whatever. Listen, if McDonald's franchise is making $1 million a month in gross revenue and they're paying out $1.1 million, that franchisee is going to go out of business. I'm sorry, this is so simple economics.
Mhm.
The problem here is that these insurance companies have been doing just this. They've been losing money over the years in the last especially 10, 15, 20 years with these fires. They've been losing more and more money and they're having to cut their losses. Um, when you look at the number of fires, and this is all public information, and when you look at Southern California Edison, and you look at Pacific Gas and Electric in Northern California that have been sued because of fires that they have been, attributed to
Mhm.
have responsible for faulty equipment. There are lawsuits still going on for loss of life, loss of property. The insurance companies, and by the way, to the great information you provided, Bill, about the lack of forest fire threat mitigation, these CEOs and board of directors are looking and say, wait a minute, we are taking enormous risk for our livelihood if we stay in these markets. We will go out of business.
Mhm.
We have a fiduciary responsibility to our investors, to our stockholders. We have to make a profit or we don't survive. Now, it doesn't mean that some of these insurance companies are not, I don't know, maybe they're gouging or whatever, but they have to make a profit. And they're saying, you know what? We cannot insure people in this zone because they're going to bankrupt us. And they had to make a decision to drop them. So a lot of these people in California lost their homes with mortgages still on them,
Mhm.
and they weren't insured because they couldn't afford the insurance premium, or they got canceled and they could not find another carrier in time to get insured before these fires. You talk about a nightmare upon a nightmare. This is what a lot of people are experiencing.
The, the other thing I've heard, Mark, is that, well, first off, you bring up a good point that the insurance business is risk management, right? I think one thing that we haven't mentioned here for people that don't live in this area, the past 2 years have been, I should say, probably 2023, the rainy season of 22-23, extremely wet, extremely wet. Record number, a record snowfall up in the whatever you call it, the
Sierra,
mountains,
Sierra
the
Nevada.
snowpack. Yeah, record rainfall down here. But right now, there has been no rain since April, and now we're in January, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is you have 2 years of heavy rain. All the vegetation grows. I mean, LA is a beautiful place. Everything is green. It's growing. and then you have no rain for what's it been now, 7 months,
10 months. Oh,
10
longer than
months,
yeah,
yeah,
something like
9
that.
months,
Yeah,
whatever.
9 months. Yeah.
Everything dries out, and you have a super abundance of this fuel that we've talking about. And you hear October that the Forest Service is not doing any more controlled burns. The insurance companies pay people a lot of money to identify and manage risk. They see this problem on the horizon, Mark, and they say, exit strategy. Exit strategy. We got to get out of this market because they know there's going to be a huge event. It's just a question of when. And my thing is, if the insurance companies could predict this, if they could predict this increase in risk and manage their business accordingly, and I get it, it's people don't like to hear that, but really that's what they did. Why couldn't our government do that? Why didn't our government look at those same factors and say, oh my God, we're about to have a big fire incident? Because the insurance companies knew and took action. Why? Because their bottom line matters. Our federal government, our state government did not, because why? There's no bottom line with firefighting, right? That's there's no bottom line with this mitigation of the fire threat.
100%, Bill.
Yeah.
It's 100%.
And
It's
Mark,
not.
have you heard this? It's about reinsurance. Have you heard the discussion about reinsurance?
I have not. With
So
that
Anthony,
phrase, I'm not familiar.
Anthony or Vince, could you look for this and maybe you find something real quick? But I guess one of the issues that so in areas of high risk, somehow these insurance companies are able to lay off that risk. They're able to insure themselves,
Huh?
and they pass that cost on to the customers. In California, the government said, no, you cannot reinsure.
Yeah.
You cannot reinsure and pass that cost off to the customers. And what happened was they said, well, then we can't tolerate the risk if we can't lay it off. And they canceled policies. And now I believe there's been a change, and they are now, just in the past month or so, after this all started coming out about canceled policies, they are now allowing companies to lay off that risk. What can we make of this here? To allow reinsurance and rate making. See, December 30th, too late.
Wow, too late.
Right?
And
It's
Bill,
because,
and I did hear about that. I didn't remember that phrase, but I do remember this about them discussions. Basically, allowing the insurance companies to raise their rates in California was quashing that, and so the insurance company said, "Well, then we can't stay in the market."
yeah. So I want to, I don't know. There's a fine line here. I'm not advocating on either side of it, right? Because
Neither am I.
I'll be the first to say there's a lot of corporate greed out there. But what I do have to say is, in my opinion, they didn't just cancel these policies for no reason. They canceled them because it didn't make sense in the risk portfolio because of the regulations in California, right? Because of regulation in California and because of the increased fire risk on the horizon, they said, we're out.
Yeah, Bill, this is exactly right. People have to remember, the insurance companies, like any other business, want you to pay them. They want you to pay them. So when they cancel your policy, you have to wonder, well, why? Why do they not want my money from me? Because, like you said, they have done the analysis, they've done the research, they've made their predictions, and they prepare to protect themselves, unlike, I think, California did.
Yep.
They did not prepare. The old saying is, if it's predictable, it's preventable. They predicted that there would be a massive loss like this. So he said, nope. And they protected themselves. So they prevented themselves from losing all this money. And meanwhile, now these people who were uninsured are in such a position I can't even imagine, without that coverage.
No, and I mean, it's going to affect everybody. And this isn't what anyone, listen, I didn't lose my house, Mark. And I'm not.
And neither did I. Yes.
Yeah. And thank God. And I'm not. I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is, though, something like this will affect everybody because these people they're probably going to be made whole somehow, and that's a lot of money to come from somewhere. That's all I'm saying, right? That's a lot of money to come from somewhere. And then, so this particular, the insurance change in the law, December 30th, again, too late. The policies had already been canceled, and then finally I saw something else that I thought was just annoying or frustrating on insurance. The insurance commissioner for California released a statement, or did a press release. He's prohibiting now companies from canceling policies for the next 6 months. Mark, where's there going to what could possibly burn in California in the next 6 months that hasn't burned yet? In other words, I'm saying, like, okay, you can't cancel policies for 6 months. That's not going to help anybody right now.
No,
that's
of course
really
not.
not going to help anybody.
It's not going to help anybody,
No.
and I would like to find out. I'm sure that'll be challenged in court. The idea that you tell a business how to run.
That's a great point. You're forcing a business to provide a service.
Correct.
That probably, that they can argue, probably is, a negative.
There you go.
Cancel or renew policies. Okay, of victims. Well,
yes,
that does make sense. But if you're already a victim, I mean, I guess that's the point I was trying to make a minute ago, Mark.
You can't. Yeah, you can't count.
But if you're already a victim, it already happened. Like how is now? Okay, so good. You get to keep your fire insurance on your burned out place. Like, I'm not clear on who that's. Can someone explain that to me there?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, in other words, have companies in the past somehow voided policies after the fact? I certainly doubt it, but I don't know. I've never been in that situation. I'm not sure what it means either. But it certainly indicates the complete disaster. Pardon the use of the word, that this entire thing is in California. It should not be like this. All of these things these insurance companies are afraid of can and should have been mitigated. Again, it's not zero risk. Otherwise, insurance companies wouldn't have a market. There has to be a risk that someone's trying to mitigate in order to pay an insurance company. So you can't get rid of all the risk, but you can certainly reduce it. You can mitigate it. There's a reason, by the way, that my insurance tripled. It more than tripled over 7 years. Again, that was 3 different providers. It's because these insurance companies, like you said, Bill, they did risk analysis, and the risk kept getting higher and higher and higher. And by the way, when the Paradise Fire happened, this Paradise Fire, and there's a couple other huge ones, I can't remember the names right now.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, it affects everybody. That's another reason that my insurance premiums went so high, because I was covering the losses of those other policyholders.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it works. So, and we will see what happens. I will say this: if this doesn't open the eyes of people in California, and again, this is not a partisan statement, I promise, but it is a government statement. If people don't understand how incompetent and how inept that local and county and state government is in California right now, literally, in my opinion, nothing will. When these fires broke out, and certainly when we saw the devastation in our old neighborhood there, my wife and I were in the living room just watching, and we were just all these streets that we know, and are riding bicycles and running and hiking, all these canyons that are burned to a crisp. She pointed, my wife pointed, she goes, "Mark, that's why we left." Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And she didn't mean specifically the fires. Of course, we knew we lived under tremendous fire risk. We knew the whole time we were there. We loved it. It was paradise otherwise. We knew what risk we're living in. She was talking about the management of the people responsible to mitigate these risks. That's what she meant, because that's why we left. She was talking about it because we did talk about it afterwards, and she expanded on her point. That's what she was talking about. And those are the fires there.